Hi, everyone. So we're talking about the Neptune-Uranus conjunction in Capricorn today. It's a generational influence, and I'm going to share a PowerPoint to start out with. So I'm titling this, "The Struggle is Real," but the point that I'm going to be arguing is that the struggle is also not real. It's Neptune in Capricorn, so it's a struggle that is real in reality and also can be escaped or transmuted somehow. So I'm going to get into how that works out. And I want to introduce this concept with a video. All right. Sorry, it's taking me a minute. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, do you guys see this over here?
Yes.
Anyone on your social media, like I do, that's over the age of 40.
If you guys have anyone in your social media like this woman, a millennial who hates millennials,
you've probably seen the post at some point about how much our generation sucks.
Well, as a millennial, I took it upon myself to try and evaluate what's so wrong with our generation and why they're so mad at us.
We don't even hold the door open for ladies, much less our elders anymore.
And we understand that surface gestures are totally cool, but they do nothing to dismantle systemic patriarchy.
We use words like bae to describe someone we love.
And we use words like racist to describe someone who thinks that the word bae isn't real simply because it didn't originate from a white Eurocentric vernacular.
We're lazy.
We're driven.
We're really entitled.
And we're told we're entitled.
And we want to make a lot of money and have free education, but we're not really willing to put in the work.
We just want to pay rent and get an affordable education, but the predatory student loan system is making a profit off of our desire to do so.
Our idea of standing up for something we believe in means going on Facebook and posting a status with your opinion. Everything that used to be frowned upon.
Civil rights, marriage equality, feminism, the right to vote, freedom of religion, freedom of gender expression, equal pay.
Is now celebrated.
I'm sorry, Alexis.
Now I guess I see why people call us Generation Y.
Because it comes after X and before Z, and that's how the alphabet works.
I hope we start pulling our pants up.
I hope we stop trafficking in respectability politics and maybe make a difference in 2016 so that we can make a difference in the future.
Did that work, everyone?
Was there a video there, like actually people moving and talking? And
Yeah.
We have Adam Conover from True TV's Adam Ruins Everything.
Did it not work?
It was just frozen on the screen, but I could hear them talking, but the picture was frozen.
Okay.
Did you want to, do you want to start again and redo it again?
I don't know how I would make it work better on my end. So it was moving for me.
Pardon?
It was moving on my screen.
Okay, so we might have to start this again, I think, because I think there was it's pretty muddled up at the beginning. We can do it again,
Okay,
Sabrina.
Okay, I don't know what I would do differently though, Linda, to make it work.
Okay, did anybody else see the video actually moving, you know? Or was it frozen? Sue?
I didn't see anything moving. I saw a woman and I heard the woman's picture and voices.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
Yes, the same here.
Yeah, so Sabrina, I think the video isn't going to actually work. I don't know why. We've never had, it should work, but you know, once again, it's another area that we have to look into.
Other people have tried video and I think the same thing has happened. I think, yeah.
Oh, part of the theme of this transit that I'm talking about is like futility and things not working.
Maybe we should just keep it in.
Going. Yeah,
Want to
it
just
fits the
keep-
theme. It's all good.
Do you want to just keep going?
Okay, but we heard the banter back and forth. There were two voices.
Yes.
Okay. That's the, I can link later to the video so that people can watch it. But the point is just that there's this conversation with this generation around entitlement, about how to get a job, how there's no jobs available. And hopefully that portrayed two different perspectives. One was this kind of Uranus social dinosaur person who is saying like, we should hold the door open for people. And the other person was more progressive Uranian.
So you're happy just to continue, or do you want to restart the meeting?
I'm happy to continue.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, a little bit of a glitch, but we're talking about Uranus here, so in Capricorn.
Okay. Yeah, good. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to get back to the PowerPoint now. Okay, we're all here, right?
Yes, I can see it. Yep.
Okay. So I want to talk about the concept of catch-22 when we're talking about Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn. We have a comic here that says, my insurance covers this, right, Doc? Sure it does, Yosarian, but there's a catch. Well, what catch? Catch-22, you're covered for the treatment as long as you don't need the treatment. Once you need the treatment, you're no longer covered. That's some catch-22, the best there is. So Wikipedia on catch-22 is saying, strictly speaking, it's a problematic situation for which the only solution is denied by a circumstance inherent in the problem or by a rule. For example, losing something is typically a conventional problem. To solve it, one looks for the lost item until one finds it. But if the thing lost is one's glasses, one can't seem to look for them. Catch-22. The term catch-22 is also used more broadly to mean a tricky problem or a no-win or an absurd situation. And in the book Catch-22, there's a military rule typifying bureaucratic operation and reasoning. The rule is not stated in a general form, but the principal example in the book fits the definition above. If one is crazy, one does not have to fly missions, and one must be crazy to fly. But one has to be excused, and applying demonstrates that one is not crazy, because applying means that one's sane, and so they end up having to fly the mission. I feel like that's a general mood for Uranus, Neptune, and Capricorn. There's this kind of like broken gear feeling, or like a glitch in the matrix or something with this, with these two planets together. Also a lot of creativity and a lot of possibility, but the rules are kind of like at their edge point. Like there's a broken culture that's been inherited. So I'll go on to this: engineering minds, collective debts, and inheritances. People born with the Uranus-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn also have Pluto in Scorpio. So they have an underlying karma as well around debt and inheritance, which I see as two sides of the same coin. So they're inheriting the culture. They're also, its gifts and its debts. So I see this generation as having these kind of engineering, innovative souls. The Uranus-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn brings a dimension of being at the top of one's career on a soul level over a series of lives. These are engineering souls who enter this reality with a lot of shit to shovel through, for lack of a less crass metaphor. Reminds me, my grandpa's a triple Capricorn, and I remember him telling me, like, I'd shovel through shit to finish college. Like, he'd do whatever he had to do to, like, do the thing. So I hear that Capricorn voice right there. They know their potential before they've earned it in physical reality. So they feel sickened at the state of their condition if they don't recognize that they're gazing into their future, what they're capable of, what their potential is. But they have to walk in this time-space reality to meet that. There's this uncomfortable juxtaposition of the archetypes of Neptune in Capricorn, for example, Uranus in Capricorn, because these are, Uranus and Neptune are not really very time-oriented, and Capricorn is all about time. So people with this aspect might think, what's brought me to such a low spot? Why am I not being paid for my gifts and my potentials? Why do I have to pay my dues to this farce of a social reality? Here's a meme that has some of the sentiments of this. Says, I like a thing. Parents, why aren't you getting paid for the thing? And this is the Capricorn image right here. Yeah, I can't like not laugh looking at this. So invisible or visible wealth, becoming less discriminating about what wealth is or where it comes from. Part of the broken gears of the Uranus-Neptune and Capricorn reality is to assume that money follows a specific track and a specific timed sequence, when many of these souls may actually have to rely on loans from family or banks to even get to a place where they can start earning money. There could be an inherent fear in this process, such as what happens if I borrow the money but can't earn it back? It calls to mind indentured servitude, perhaps an actual past life trauma for many of these souls. They fear a lack of social mobility, while at the same time, this is an era with immense social mobility because of things like the internet. Something I also correlate with this transit. And souls, these souls are ready to use that social mobility in as much as they know it's possible. The nature of Uranus and it being a trauma archetype, though, is that we perceive current events or our life in this life through that trauma. So there can be that sense of futility, even though there's so much expanse and so much openness. So I'm going to quote some Jeffrey Wolf Green on Uranus in Capricorn and Neptune in Capricorn for some background before we continue. So he says mental trauma can occur to these people. This is Uranus in Capricorn. By way of their family of origin, wherein one or both parents are dysfunctional in some way, absent, emotionally unavailable, or through sudden loss of a partner. Trauma can also occur through not being validated or acknowledged for who they are by the parents. And as adults, these same dynamics can occur through non-acceptance by mainstream people or society, of being severely misjudged by those in their career field of choice, by sudden loss of social position or career, and through feeling psychologically misplaced in their overall environment. In addition, these individuals can suffer from severe forms of depression and psychologically self-defeating attitudes towards life in general. So thinking of Uranus being about, uniqueness and being different, also about fitting in or not fitting in, to be in the house or the sign Capricorn that relates with the status quo, there's an inherent paradox in that combination. And ideally, there is we do need people that are innovative or are separate from the status quo to influence the status quo. So it's kind of a matter of finding that out, finding out how to be oneself, even with the pressure to fit in. He continues, these states are created because of the experience of feeling blocked or thwarted by the environment. This can generate a feeling that it is pointless to work toward any goal or objective because it does not mean anything anyway. These attitudes reflect subconscious memories that reflect other lifetimes of being defeated by forces that they cannot control, of memories that reflect lifetimes in which the promised rewards linked with the goals that were so hardly worked towards never materialized. A permeating sarcasm and pessimism underlies these individuals' very way of being, and this type of psychology by the effect of these types of trauma. And then there's the Neptune one. And before I go on, I just want to pause and ask if there's any questions. And if not, it's okay, I can keep going. All right, Neptune in Capricorn. Jeffrey Wolf Green says, idealistic expectations about the nature of family structures, societal structures, and the structure of the world itself. The essence of these expectations is based on the principle of sacrificing oneself, the ego, for the larger good to others. The principle of sacrifice can have many forms, many applications. There is an unconscious expectation that purity and right action, this innocence of Neptune, should define and prevail in any activity, large and small. These individuals are typically defined by an unconscious and uneasy feeling of guilt, that they have done something wrong, or that there is something wrong with them. Thus, there is a need to correct or atone for that guilt. As a result, this can generate life experiences in which their unconscious ideals of purity and right action, of egocentric self-sacrifice to the other, are violated. The abusive father, the emotionally unavailable parent, the narcissistic husband or wife, the needy of this world who latch onto these people for dear life and abuse what is offered, the imperfect worlds that violate the expectation of purity and right action, etc. Over time, this kind of experience can generate horrible, depressive disillusionment and trauma that can create severe bouts of depression. This trauma can lead to a life in which these people struggle to throw off the undermining feelings of being continually defeated by life itself. In addition, disillusionment and trauma can occur through the experience that what is considered real becomes unreal. Nothing seems to be permanent, nothing seems to last, and the very nature of reality is but transitional images that come and go. And that what is real is only real for the time that it actually exists. Accordingly, cycles of despair or fighting off an inner feeling of being consumed by a dark, bottomless pit define the inner world of these individuals. As a result, these individuals create a fundamental fear of losing control and yet longing to do so. And I want to pause here to say that this is such an extreme interpretation. Pluto is currently transiting conjunct many of these people's natal Uranus and Neptune, so that might color some of the intensity. And at the same time, this particular work that I'm quoting him from is based on trauma. So he's analyzing these archetypes through trauma specifically. So I'm kind of getting into the intensity or the struggle of this generation first, before getting into some of the gifts and lighter sides. So stay tuned for that. And he continues, paradoxically, many of these people will seem like beacons of salvation light to others because of this inner world. This is because these people know their inner pains so well that it serves to motivate them to heal the suffering of others. This symbol, Neptune in Capricorn, or the 10th house, is the ultimate symbol of the crucifixion of the ego. It was super fascinating. Invisible money and future money is money. So this is just an idea I'm throwing out. I'm still trying to figure out what this is. But I think with Neptune and Capricorn, it's such a confusing economic. And it's like a spiritual economic at the same time. So these are ideas that I am considering for this conjunction. So with this generation, their challenge is perhaps being jaded or not having faith, of being too wrapped up in the matrix of visible formed reality, what's already here, as to make decisions on what is already manifest versus banking on the imagination and creating new realities, using their understanding of what doesn't work to come up with an alternative. These are souls who might judge the way that paper money is imaginary, and this could make them not even want to play the game at all. What's the point? When they could also use the same money as imaginary thought to empower themselves, to play the game of making money, being in the world, etc., in a spiritual and grounded way. These are types who need to be engineering and inventive to see the connection between the physical and the non-physical worlds. Their practical livelihoods depend on it. Their materialism is not to be judged, I'd argue. The material is spiritual for these souls. The inherent conflict of Neptune and Capricorn, for example, is seeing the structure of something invisible, and not recognizing that some of our beliefs of how reality is structured are delusional or fantastical, but that it will play out anyway as a reality because that's how Neptune works. It's like a film projector that projects our ideas about reality onto reality. So it's just kind of like a trippy, am I in the matrix, am I not kind of thing, like what's reality? And that playing out for very real practical things that seem like they should be real, but are just not that real to this generation until they figure out what is real for them. I'm gonna skip this one, maybe come back to it. Fitting in, while past generations may have felt they had a place to fit in once they came of age in terms of job opportunities, this generation needs to innovate to fit in because the old systems are breaking down. There's plenty of work to be done in terms of creating new culture and more ethical, sustainable infrastructures, and this generation is suited for it. And then order of operations. One illusion these souls can have is that it's necessary for them to have the capital or have the money before they do the thing. But I would say the money follows the thing. And while previous generations may have had decisions, may have made their work decisions based on the basis of what resources they already had, not to say that people didn't get bank loans in the past, but it seemed to follow a more orderly trajectory. I feel like with the infusion of Pluto and Scorpio at the bottom of this generation's chart signature, there might be more around borrowing or debt. Also that the catch-22 element to come back, if they try to save up based on what jobs they could get based on their experience and what's offered in the world already, these wages will likely leave them with only enough money to survive in many cases. So there's debt, and this debt can be transmuted. Transiting Pluto and Capricorn is hitting this natal alignment for many, so I want to talk about the business shadow and how there can be fear around this. There's fear around the ruthless business archetype. We see the shadow of that so clearly in terms of a society being structured in such a way that money is the bottom line, and it doesn't matter who gets stepped on or who gets hurt along the way. That's this like competitive survival of the fittest, social Darwinism, like all of that stuff that we are hopefully leaving behind. And yet business or commerce, movement of resources is not inherently bad. It's a matter of figuring out a model that is more enlightened, more compassionate. So I said that there's a new kind of business empowerment emerging. And what frees the Uranus-Neptune and Capricorn generation is a connection to their intuition and to spirituality, and to build the structures of their life, whether it's their personal life or their public life, their lifestyles, from that higher connection. Not to have this separation between spirituality and practicality. Rigid boundaries of this is spiritual, this is not spiritual. These aren't souls wanting to make a hollow living. They're not souls that want nice things at the expense of people in sweatshops or the devastation of earth. But these are people who want nice things that are ethically sourced, potentially. Some of them aren't materialistic at all. And I'd say they have to believe that this is not too much to ask for. They also have to find out how, in fact, these aspects of reality that we want can actually exist. So competition within the capitalist reality is an illusion, but it's been real because it's been acted upon and made infrastructure. What happens when we don't abide by that, but meet money and resources on the natural, phenomenal plane instead? Here's like Uranus coming into the picture of like, there's the capitalist matrix of reality and there's other matrices of reality. How do we operate in other kinds of structured realities? There's one thing that came to mind. It's something that I read a few years ago, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles, and it has such a Capricorn energy behind it. It's also quite old. I think it's from the Industrial Revolution. So I just want to touch on that for a minute as a metaphor. He's basically saying that men of the plutocratic type who have become rich on the plane of competition come and go, that they're the same things that brought them to power will also let them go, that they're not actually in tune with source. And he goes as far as to call them like the monster reptiles of prehistoric eras, which I thought was tapping into the sentiment of Pluto and Scorpio a little bit. And he's saying that riches secured on the competitive plane are not satisfactory and permanent. They're yours today and another's tomorrow. And his argument about becoming rich in his scientific way is that reality doesn't operate on the competitive plane. That's a human construct. He says you must never think for a moment that the supply is limited. Just as soon as you begin to think that all the money is being cornered and controlled by bankers and others, and that you must exert yourself to get laws passed to stop this process, and so on, in that moment you drop into the competitive mind, and your power to cause creation is gone for the time being. And what is worse, you will probably arrest the creative movements you have already instituted. I'm also going to summarize this long quote, but he's basically saying that people create things by thinking about them, and that people that are looking at reality based off of what is already created are limited, versus if you connect with that side of yourself that can create things by thinking about them, you never have to worry about competition. There's no one out to try to steal or corner the market. There will be like endless resource for all. Not the way that we've been culturally conditioned at all. So this planetary alignment can speak to soul memory and trauma around futility. The struggle is real comes to mind for Neptune and Capricorn alone. This is a comedic meme used by members of my generation to express hardships which are either first world problems or situations of futility. Though it is somewhat Neptune and Capricorn in its feeling, it's been spread through mass hive mind of the internet, so I see Uranus in that. There's a disillusionment with authority. Neptune, Capricorn. These souls naturally dislike the pretense of false authority. At the same time, this can block these souls from embodying their own inner authority if they're not discerning about the difference between false and true authority. Pluto and Scorpio also means that these souls can sniff lies and pretense. Many of these souls grew up being told things by their parents or teachers which they knew were not real, but obedience to these structures and rules was rewarded if not demanded. There's a disillusionment with public image. These souls often possess disillusionment with the difference between public image and real life, based on how people present on social media. And there's a jadedness here, kind of wanting to detach or wanting to go back to some day in the past, while at the same time social media is also a tool which can be used innovatively to alter reality. There's depression. These souls have a need to examine in a removed way, Uranus, the way that the things that cause us depression. It's an urge from the soul to examine all that has led to where we are, a natural evolutionary process of self-development. It allows for educated and calculated change. These depressions can be traumatic and cyclical until the insight is reached or extracted, based on the nature of the way that trauma recreates itself. And then the concept of spiritual participation in society. There's an idea from the past that becoming enlightened or being spiritual, there's this austere kind of separateness from the world, to transcend the ordinary functions of the world, to go be in a cave. These things, it's not a grounded spirituality, basically. And it also creates a judgment of what's spiritual and what's not, that this world that we've incarnated into, that's not the spiritual thing. Let's escape the body, go, straight up. And I think there's more opportunity within this transit to see the spiritual life of being in the world, of contributing to society, of seeing what the culture is missing and creating that. I wrote here, and this is so basic, as a metaphor. It obviously would go way deeper than this, but I said it's like eating superfoods, doing yoga, juice cleansing, doing all that kind of stuff, but also getting involved in organizing community services or getting involved in politics, meditating, being a politician, combining these things of the status quo and of spirit. It's a superpower to really do both, to attend to spirit and to reality, and to see the inherent connection between them, to stop drawing imaginary lines of where they differ. And this is how people can start to have a more embodied and more socially supported spiritual reality versus it being this separate thing. Also, really, when I was writing this, there were so many ideas coming through that I wrote these really long slides, but I figured I would deviate from them a little bit. But I was writing about spiritual materialism and the need to stop shaming that based off of, it's again this outmoded construct that the physical realm and the spiritual realm are separate, that the body isn't spiritual, that we need to transcend the things of the world. When the earth itself is a physical being, and it's currently being destroyed by these major economic powers. And these same economic powers could be directed towards caretaking and having stewardship and loving the earth. It's a matter of what inspiration is driving these means of production. And I think that that's something that Neptune and Uranus in Capricorn can dive into is, green technology, enlightened ways of business. And I think that one way to get there is to stop shaming the sense of materialism or thinking that it's bad to be materialistic. One thing that I was meditating on with this is that there's spiritual lines of thought that are becoming more popular of how our emotional vibration affects how we manifest what we attract. And so we could be very athletic about our emotional vibration and manifestation and decide to go live in a cave and not have any nice material things, sleep on a bed of nails, anything super austere like that, and still be blissed out and happy. But having a decent, supportive physical reality creates a positive feedback loop. It's like creating a container, that Capricorn or Saturnian process, to have an elevated experience. So if you like to have, candlelight at nighttime and that makes you feel inspired, why not do that? Just no longer there's just a sense of shame about liking things. And yet that is the way in to spirit for this particular planetary alignment. And there's a shadow to the spiritual materialism. And this would be to create an island in it. Being in superfood, fancy chocolate palace land and not sharing it or not using that kind of, these superfoods or spiritual practices or having a lush physical life really does resource people emotionally. And this can be contributed to the ecology of human existence. It can resource people to be part of the world. And there's an us versus them thing that comes into that when wealth is distributed differently. I think I wrote about it a little bit later, so I'll get back to that. But I want to talk about gaslighting as well, based on there being a significant trauma signature with Neptune Uranus like this. And so I have a picture that says, get a job, get your fucking life together. And there's this bunny being like, what? So this generation can be gaslit when they're actually in traumatic experience. They don't do things the way that other generations had. And sometimes this is assumed that they have a psychological or character error. But it's an entire generational phenomenon, and there are cultural influences that necessitate that this generation do things a different way. This generation starts to have traits of mental illness or intense distress when they are forced or coerced into doing things that previous generations had accepted. This generation specifically has soul trauma around these types of force, control, and domination. And so while they are being triggered about their trauma and reacting to that, others can act like this generation is maladjusted rather than tuning into their unique psychology. And then I also could argue that this generation has a tendency to, just by being themselves, trigger other generations and cause anxiety because they threaten the status quo. They have this Pluto and Scorpio, I see power, I know power, I'm not going to play into power games. And it disturbs the status quo and anyone who's defending it. And there's an evolutionary potential to this gaslighting. And just in case I don't think I defined it, gaslighting is when a person's having an experience that someone else labels as like, oh, they're just mentally ill, to devalidate what they're experiencing. And so this can be really crippling for people. Among this generation's trials is to develop inner authority and to trust one's own inner and higher guidance, even in situations where it feels like they're, like Jeffrey Wolf Green said earlier, very psychologically misplaced in their environment. They feel something on the inside, but literally every authoritative figure around them at a certain point is telling them that they're wrong, or they're bad, or they need to do something else. And this is quite difficult because we do listen to what other people say around us, because we don't just want to bulldoze through the reality. It seems tyrannical to not listen to everyone around us. But what happens when everyone around you is saying something about you that's not true? Something like, just out of place. That's a conflict. And it invites this discovery of one's internal knowing, internal authority, which is Capricorn, internal spiritual connection, and higher self connection, which is Uranus. And there's also, it doesn't necessarily get that suffocating. People do have the internet, they have like-minded communities, they have friends. This planetary alignment does speak to finding community, as well as time periods of thinking, oh, I'm so alone, there's no one like me. So this was the us versus them, or integration of that. This is a really complex idea that I don't even know how to talk about yet. But it's a sense of really far sides of the spectrum. On one side, it's like judging wealth and judging symbols of wealth and assuming that people who have nice things are evil and shadowy. And the other side of that is like having nice things and then thinking that people who don't just don't get it, or they're less enlightened, or whatever it is. And the middle path of that is realizing that people who have different physical realities, different structural realities, different resources, different cards that they're dealt by society, that there's systemic imbalances of power and resources in this collective social reality. This affects people. It's not about people's character. People have different cards that they're dealt. And so to add in this kind of Neptune and Capricorn element, it's like, how do we create infrastructure that's compassionate? How do we share the wealth? And so I don't know the answer to that yet. Also long slides. I think, and then there was a video, but that's not working. So I think I want to end this here and get back to just talking with you guys and see if there's any questions. There's a lot of information, and I want to see if there's anything I can clarify.
Hi, Sabrina, it's Linda. I have a Uranus squaring Neptune, last quarter square, and I could see a lot of that relating to myself, what you shared. So, yeah, Uranus square Neptune.
Yeah, I mean, the relationship between the two, it's, also a potential to be so freed by spirituality, and to also be so nebulously imprisoned by a mysterious force. It's like either one, or anywhere in between. Any other questions?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
So I was working during this period of time. I was working for the post office, and I came up with this saying: the rules are, there are no rules, and they could change at any minute. And a lot of the stuff that you said when you were talking about the Saturn Capricorn, Uranus and Neptune together just, I mean, totally fits that saying. You know, the rules are arbitrary, and there aren't any rules, but they could change, you know, at the drop of a hat.
When I had my, like started the Uranus square to my natal Uranus, I had learned that, you know, rules are completely arbitrary. And I had this sense of like, forget the rules, like, and I was just so radically deconditioned, but it upset people around me. And I started to realize that rules also have to do with compassion and boundaries, and that there was, you know, on this one sense, I could be so radical and be like, you know, no rules, they change at any time, and like really feel that way. But on the Uranus like relation level, I could feel how that was extremely alienating, but also alarming to people, because if you don't have a code, or you don't, you know, have values, so you're just like a wild card. That's frightening on a lot of levels for people.
Yeah, and Capricorn wants to have rules.
Yeah.
And that was what, you know, my point was, I was living in this very Saturnian Capricorn world of military, you know, ex-military people who had no authority but wanted to exert it on everybody else. And they were making these arbitrary rules that really there were no rules.
But they had the, you know, it's like the force and tyrannical element of Capricorn, it sounds like.
Exactly.
It's interesting that you had that like bureaucratic space to experience this transit through, and just the kind of like gears, like what's going on with Neptune and Uranus conjunct in Capricorn.
Yeah, and it gives me insight now. My nephew was born at that point in time, and it gives me insight into how he is and how he was raised, and how, for instance, his mother saw him as not following rules, or not, you know, living up to expectations, external expectations.
Right. This is also a generation, I didn't even include this, like a heavily medicated generation. Like, not uncommon for school teachers to be like, well, you know, they're not paying attention in school, maybe go see this therapist, get diagnosed with ADHD. So I'm, you know, wondering what's going to continue to happen as this generation comes of age, because of the nature of how heavily gaslit this generation has been, just for being who they are, or not wanting to respect arbitrary authority. You know, if you're in a school environment and you're being told what to do, this generation with this planetary alignment is specifically just not sympathetic to following the rules unless they could connect with them.
Well, and you know, also many of them had Chiron and Cancer, so you know, I think they were really sensitive too to, you know, external authority, and to, you know, being afraid to speak up for fear of that external authority.
Yeah. And I mean, it was like in this construct, like a child in this environment, it's like I remember having the feeling when I was a kid, sometimes I'd think like, maybe I should just run away, like if I was mad. And then I would like go through my mind, and there'd be a checklist of like all the social structures that would round me up and like just bring me back home. Because like, I don't think I can actually run away. Like I just knew that there was like a net that would catch me, like a very institutional net. And I remember just like, you know, pouting about that in my room. But that feels like something so like, you know, for this generation. You know, it was the sense too that like, yeah, these structures like societal power institutions have a certain degree of power, and they can wield that without, you know, like, you know, there's this sense of futility, like what can I do? So I was fine in school, like in public school. I was very able to focus. I didn't have like behavioral issues. So it didn't really strike me until I got older and like learned more about this, what was going on. It was just part of my reality of like, oh, that's part of me. So
That's interesting. My nephew was really good in school too, but he had a good friend who was diagnosed as ADHD, and bless his heart, my nephew, who has Mars and Venus and Aquarius, took him under his wing and kind of shielded him from some of the other kids, and stood up for him. And
there's these arbitrary things, like a kid who has ADHD, they might simply just have a different kind of intelligence that the school's not supporting, and so it's not really fair to medicate them so that they fit into a structure that's not meant for them. Just as, the music video I was going to show is about like growing food. And it's the sense that like, there's structural issues with the way that society is running that create problems, and we're fixing the symptoms of those problems rather than the root, which Pluto and Scorpio would want to pay attention to. So, even like you're thinking about like pharmaceuticals treating health issues that could be resolved just by getting to the root of the health issue, but then the pharmaceutical creates more symptoms, so then you get diagnosed with other things and treated for other things, and you have this whole web of illogical medical treatment, and that's something that frustrates this generation deeply, is like seeing those like illogical, like, why is this reality? And it's very challenging to move forward when a person is that bogged down and very, and I said the struggle is real and it's not real. It is real when a structural power is saying like, you can't have access to this social service and you can't get this job. And, there is a literal economic disempowerment that's playing out. The way that I see the struggle also not being real is the sense that if the trauma or the underlying soul signature behind it can be resolved, there's an immense spiritual power to this natal position. I think of it like, I haven't even looked too much into this, like the pineal gland being calcified, but just as an image, if the pineal gland is about our intuition and it's like literally calcified over and there's no intuition access, that's so Neptune and Capricorn. So imagine then when that just gets radically blast open for whatever reason, like not gradually, because that can happen too, but just like the calcification is gone. And suddenly a person is so aware of the ways that they've been disempowered or the ways that they've been blocked. That's really intense for this generation, for Pluto and Scorpio.
And it could happen with Capricorn and like that? Pluto and Capricorn now too.
Yeah. So there was another point I wanted to make with that, but I'm forgetting it.
I think I heard Wendy trying to ask a question.
Do you think it would really happen like that? That it would just be ripped off or opened up? I don't think it would happen like that.
An extreme event that triggers it.
Well, I mean, for anyone though, I mean, any kind of trauma can burst open something or rip something open, right?
Totally.
I mean, my nephew's from that generation, and he's really funny. I think he's in individuated state. I mean, he is so pissed off at the authorities. I mean, he just like can't deal with them at all, and he's so mad that Bernie Sanders didn't get elected, and he's just so disenchanted and so let down and angry. He is so angry, but he's got Chiron's in Leo, not Cancer, but and he's a Capricorn, Sun Capricorn, Sun Mercury Capricorn, so he's like got loads of it. I don't know. I think you think that Neptune and Capricorn symbolizes the calcification of the pineal gland, and also Uranus there, they're ripping open of the pineal gland.
Yeah, and when I said I haven't looked that much into it, I don't know the science behind it, and most of the sources that I see about the pineal gland being calcified are coming from sources that are these like blogs that don't seem that trustworthy, like they're sensationalizing information.
Well, I think it can be real. I think that can be true.
That's what I'm thinking too, is that it's like also a reality, but that the particular media sources reporting it had a Uranian far out kind of feel. And I'm an astrologer, I have an astrology blog, and I'm like calling something else far out, but it's like the sense of like it being like just one of those like 6 things you didn't know about, and like clickbait, I mean.
Right.
So not having a grounding in the actual science is what I'm saying, but just knowing that as a construct that has appeared on my newsfeed enough times that it's like a part of my like mental schema of reality, that there's this, calcification of the pineal gland, and it happens because of fluoride, like, that whole thing. Right. And as an image, I see it metaphorical for the intuition being blocked because of these deep constructs, and also the actual chemical obstructions, which would make sense with Uranus and Capricorn to have nervous system blockages. And also why I think that for this generation, and for anyone, but this generation is accelerated in this particular way, being able to eat good food, having resources that like empower a person's chemical reality would be really helpful. I think about any kind of body practice or just things that support and facilitate a healthy nervous system would do wonders for this. And also do wonders for the depression or the malaise that could happen with this planetary alignment.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's really helpful is Pluto and Scorpio, right? So you have that sextile, or at least some of you do, have the sextile to Uranus-Neptune. So in terms of the pineal gland and the blockages, Uranus, Capricorn, Pluto there could help. I mean, that's some power right there. That's sextile, that's pretty powerful.
I mean, like I've been doing Ashtanga yoga for like more than 6 months now, like every day, and you like sweat, and I've like been able to move into like postures I've never been in before physically, and like stuff changes. It's really cool. And when I had my first kind of like major spiritual emergence experience, I would start to see certain foods glowing, and other foods would look really sickly, or they'd start to look like they were decaying. And it was just like I would be walking through reality and seeing certain foods like literally being like, eat me, and other foods being like, don't eat me, which felt like this like Alice in Wonderland weird reality. But that was a lot for me to handle at that time. Like I didn't know what was going on, but there was a clear pattern of which foods were lit up and which foods were not. So I remember at that time feeling like everything I'd ever been told about reality was a lie, and I was just like totally like in this Uranian experience.
Yeah, also Sabrina, like your generation is not really alone in this, because this conjunction happened during my Saturn return, and for everyone here it happened to us in our 20s or our 30s. So we're dealing with all the same things that you're dealing with, that you've come in with. Yeah, just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's what has been interesting to hear, is people having, they lived through it, so they had an experience of it.
Yeah. A lot of what you shared today, you know, I've been through so much of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope I didn't make it seem antagonistic about other generations.
No,
not at all.
not at all.
No, not at all. She's just
I
saying.
can definitely relate having Saturn in Pisces, and then being in the Uranus-Pluto conjunction generation, we have that in opposition to that. And we were told a lot of the same things that you guys were. So no, definitely, I relate to you all a lot. And I think the reason, they want to call you all materialistic, because you all are an embodiment of the exposure of the materialism, that materialistic structure that was adopted without question. You know, everybody just went along with it. And you guys are like, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
You know, with that Pluto and Scorpio. And people get upset when their treasured beliefs and things that they were brought up with as correct, you know, and the structure was right. Because, you know, back in that day, you didn't question the structure. You did what you were told, you know, that Capricorn. And you guys aren't doing that.
Right.
It feels like
fantastic.
Just to add to that, I think it's actually your generation that's going to really help make a big shift, because there's such a Aquarian quality to you all, a radicalness that you know, we actually really need. And you know, if the collective wants to blame you all for being materialistic, well, who the fuck created that? You know, it wasn't you all. You know, and you know, it's just an expression, right? Every generation is evolving, right, from the previous generation. So it's just an outpicturing of what society and culture here in general has created. And I also agree with what Linda said. I mean, for me, that time, Uranus-Neptune, it was super powerful time for me. So, and I was pretty depressed, but my mother had died and there was a bunch of stuff going on, but you know, it was pretty radical. I liked it a lot more than Aquarius. Then when they all went into Aquarius.
Yeah, this generation too is right in the, was born during the transition, I guess you could say the new societal, you know, revolution, like the Industrial Revolution. This was the beginning point in the transition to this service economy, at least here in the U.S. Now, I can't speak for, of course, any other area.
Yeah. What do you mean by the service economy? Like
that the move away from manufacturing to you know, the financial, of course, the mech jobs. I'm sure you've heard that. Yeah, that was the big
kind
of
like service industry, and just like how that brought up a lot. Thinking about that, because the rules of the service industry, like the customer's always right.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Encourages people to accept abuse, or makes people accept abuse, and that that can break people. You know, so it like hurts people, but there's like significant moments of just like, I'm done. And every service job I've had, I've quit angrily or been fired. So there's that.
I can relate.
And I remember having this like intense sense of like, there's no place for me in the world. I can't get a job. There's no place for me. Like, you know, it was like this life or death feeling. And I hear that sentiment from people with the Neptune-Uranus conjunction, where it's just like, they feel like they're going to die at their job. And unless they're doing what they're really called to do. And so I think that the whole economy or structures of like, you know, this is just the way it is, or this is what makes the money, you know, it's like the money should not be the motivator. The money is like a symbol or a reward, like nourishes, it allows us to like, you know, get other resources. But it's not the God, you know, it's like, it will follow socially useful businesses. And so the thinking of, you know, we got to do this for the money is like creating things like the oil industry. You know, they're in it for the money, not for the betterment of Earth. And it's an illusion to think that, you know, the only way to have money or to be really held in luxury is to do things that hurt the planet and hurt other people, because it's just not how reality needs to function. But it's this like dinosaur like thing that we're still, and it's literally, you know, fossil fuels from dinosaurs. So it's like, I think about that in the Plutonian way of like, if we're running our society on dinosaur fuel, like no wonder there's this like social dinosaur quality of it too. Like, what are we bonding with in that way? Yeah.
But this is the period where there have been the big change. You know, before that, people were used to work for the same company for 50 years, receive a golden watch, retire, and somebody else comes. And then it's all stopped. The money became the God. Company wanted to stop having to pay for all of the social advantage to the employee. So they would hire consultant instead of having the regular employee. So a lot of the people, they didn't have job because they didn't have like a contract saying that you are working for that company and stuff like that. You know, like it stopped then when we have that conjunction in Capricorn. And the goal of it was company could make more money if they didn't have to pay for all of the extra and keep the same people like all through the year. So for the younger generation, they arrive on the market, they cannot have, you know, work for 50 years and then collect a pension. That system disappear. So they have to reinvent another system. And one of the things that we have seen is that those people, which is a very good thing, is they stop wanting to bend, you know, their lifestyle for the company. They wanted, you know, like to be able to do it on their own terms. And like even my children now, I look at them and there is no way they are going to stay 50 years work for the company and accept like everything that comes with it. They want to do it in their own way, and their lifestyle is more important than having a job for 50 years.
That's a great point. It's a change in the whole way that culture is structured, and the social mobility piece of that, yes. I think has changed because of the internet. And I mean, many other things, I'm sure, but the internet is the one that I think about a lot. So that's
yes. Yes. That's when it came into being, was around that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, too, like since you mentioned about the internet and the increase of the social mobility, I mean not social mobility, the social interaction, social media, and how I hear a lot of people denigrating you guys, you know, about your face is always in your phone, and the young people don't know how to have relationships, and it's like, really? Like we are really, you know, had the greatest relationships before. Before.
Yeah, it's different too. It's I think that there's the Capricorn side of it wants to be jaded or be like, oh, you know, people just in their phones all day and like look at it like it's this bad thing, but there's so much beauty to it. Like I'm still trying to find the, you know, articulation for it, but it's like the sense that thinking of people and then they text you and it's like instant digital media validation of psychic communication, you know, like there's a lot of, and also like, I mean, I started hanging out on the internet when I was 11 and I was on this writing community and I got my writing proofread by hundreds of people by the time that I was 13. And I reviewed and read thousands of people's writing, or not thousands of people's, but thousands of pieces of writing. I got made fun of a lot at school. I just didn't get along with people. I felt like school was a battlefield. Like I was in a Mars dasha, according to a Vedic astrologer I saw. And the internet was like my social world where I made friends, and I was like raised there by hundreds of people. And when I think about the internet, I only have immense, extreme gratitude for it, for that reason, among other ones.
I think the older cultures are afraid because it's a
Yes.
right? It's very different. I mean, even for me, sometimes I'm going to be 52 this summer, right? So I'm pretty good on the computer. I've been using a computer long time. But it's like really different, right? It's like, whoa, like life is pretty different. And, you know, it's like cutting edge change. I mean, we're never going back. And people don't know what's going to happen. It's like, it's a lot of control issues. It's all this Capricorn stuff, fear, control. It's a lot of projection.
Yeah.
Cultural projection. I mean, right? So I think, I mean, Neptune and Libra generation, let's say unconscious Neptune and Libra generation squaring Ural's Neptune, right? And Pluto and Capricorn, I don't know how many, I mean, Pluto and Cancer, I don't know how many people are left on the planet with that. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thanks. Yeah, I see the way that the internet is like a microcosm, but it's also an extension of reality. It's like another plane. It's like the hive mind, and people can project whatever they want up there. It's like, it's literally so free. There's, yeah, but I think also, I imagine it's frustrating. Like for me, I feel comfortable on the internet, and it's allowed me to make friends and given me security to then make friends in real life in a new way because of the internet. But I do think that it's a weird, you know, that feeling of like, oh my God, I have to be on the internet to participate in reality. Like I don't get invited to parties unless I'm on the internet, and I have to create this web page about myself for everyone to look at, is very daunting. But for me, because I'm a writer and because I communicate in ways that the internet facilitates really easily, I feel at home there. But I think I'm lucky in that way. Like that's why I like it. But I remember, you know, when I was on MySpace in middle school, that sense of like, I need to be here to be part of my social reality, but it's making me really insecure to have this web page dedicated to myself. And that's just what we're doing en masse. So that's kind of weird, but also full of opportunities.
Yeah, it's a widening of the definite dissolution and blasting away of the previous borders between individuals as well. And I guess that could be daunting to you know, to the older generations, because everything, the way they got their information was whatever was put on TV, which is of course another Neptune function, but it was controlled by, you know, the well, there was only, back in my day, you had what, three main channels. You know, what is it? ABC, NBC, and CBS. You know, and that's where everybody got their news from. Where now, you know, that with the internet, you can get news from everywhere. You can get some of the things, a lot of things that won't be shown on those, that you know, hierarchical Capricorn television news network.
Totally. Yeah, this is a very interesting time. It's like so much is up in the air, and like I think that what compels me when I think about this planetary placement as being born under it, and doing the research for this talk kind of clarified it, is that I think that despair and cynicism are just not options at this point. that it's important to innovate and to have compassion for the world and be participating in the world in whatever way that we feel specifically called, you know, in a really authentic way. So the thought of deconstructing futility or cynicism really appeals to me, because I think the world needs creative solutions right now to solve these immense problems that we're all facing.
Do you think, I didn't hear all of your talks, Sabrina. Do you feel like your generation is just more evolved because of that Uranus-Neptune, or you feel like they're more stifled? I mean, if they're not willing to put up with the status quo, or I guess it's all based on the soul, each soul.
Yeah, it can be accessed in a lot of ways. I think its trappings psychologically are so intense, and its freedoms are also so radical. And it's a matter of, you know, like even for me, studying evolutionary astrology and learning about astrology has freed me in so many ways. I find that the majority of my personal suffering is caused by cognitive beliefs that don't resonate, don't serve me. And so to hear people articulate reality in a way that gives me a sense of hope or possibility, it just like vanishes my suffering immediately. And, you know, that's why I write too, is I'm like, what are people, you know, what's going to be upsetting this week? Like, and what's the antidote to it archetypally? And so I think that this generation has some intense struggles, and I also have faith in us to overcome them. It's a Pluto and Scorpio thing too, so it's like such radical transformation, you know, a total like dark night of the soul potential, and then like this, you know, awakening and ecstasy on the other side. So I think it remains to be seen. I think that this generation is full of all types and people in all places.
Yeah, the fundamental root of the nodes of Pluto, they're in Capricorn and Cancer, and they'll be there for another 500 years. So I'm just pointing out that this is something that we're all dealing with. We're all dealing with the tyrannical side of Capricorn, and you know, and there's nothing stopping anyone from being more compassionate and from liberating themselves, really.
I was thinking this like afternoon about like if I didn't have the internet, or if I didn't have these books, like if I didn't have these like collected pieces of consciousness, like beautiful like Aquarian crystalline things that have reached me in so many forms, I don't know what my thoughts would be like. Like I don't know, there's this sense that like we all collectively liberate one another, and I just think that like limited thinking is causing suffering on the planet, and that there's revolutions happening in all sectors of reality, and one of them that I feel the most compelled by is the psychological revolution, or the emotional body revolution, the ability to have empowerment on that level of reality. But I just see it happening in every way right now. But a lot of the literature that fascinates me is about like how to work with your emotional body, how to experience, like how to transmute your own emotions, like stuff like that. And it's so possible. It's like on a daily basis, it feels like I have moments where I have the choice to spiral into a negative mood state or to resolve it. And I've had to not believe my negative moods anymore. Like, you know, and I can't ignore them. They have messages for me of, you know, things I need to do or things I need to attend to. But I used to believe them and spiral so deep into them and get depressed. And now I have things I can do that get me feeling like good again. And it's like, you know, what if this information was more available? And I also don't even know how to articulate what it is that I'm tapping into all the time, because it's a collection of so many different theories and philosophies and experiences. So I'm just kind of so in it, but very interested in how it can be developed and shared on a larger level.
Sabrina, I think you're tapping into the north node of Uranus in Gemini, which we're all tapping into. And also the north node of Neptune in Leo. And I think the internet is a fantastic way to, you know, share information, and it's accelerated evolution there, you know, through the information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting, Linda. That's really interesting. You know, Sabrina, I was going to say that I have the very same feelings a lot of times. One, I have a Capricorn moon, plus I have Saturn opposing Uranus, Pluto, Neptune. I mean, Uranus, Pluto, Venus squaring my nodes. So it's pretty strong, and it's in the 10th house. So I have definite Capricorn thoughts, fear thoughts that come up, like, what if I didn't have access to these crystals or this or that or whatever? And you know, then if I was trapped by patriarchy, I would probably get really negative. And, you know, I have those thoughts sometimes, but I think that Saturn's been around a long time, right? The distortion of Capricorn's been around a long time. So many people have had these feelings. And I would say that might be even like past life fears and stuff that come up. I don't know, I just see your generation more as revolutionary, you know. There was something else I was going to say, but I don't remember what it is now.
You know, I feel that we are revolutionary, and it's going to be a matter of time of like how we develop our ideas and how we also connect to each other. You know, still the idea that many people of this generation have been medicated against their will is deeply fascinating to me, and I hear it so much, but it's not in the conversation as publicly as I currently wish it was. It's still just this like, oh yeah, like that happened to me kind of thing, and it's like a big thing. So it's stuff like that. I'm curious about what will happen at our Saturn returns and that kind of thing. But yeah, we are a bit over time, so maybe we should close here.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Sabrina. That was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, and thanks everybody.
Yeah, thanks for the
Thank
opportunity.
you. That was great.
Thanks, Sabrina.
This was great.
Sabrina.
See you next time. Bye, everyone.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.